Hey there, it is December 23rd, Wednesday, second to last Wednesday of the year, which means it is time for some comic book reviews. In this video, I will be reviewing mostly DC books and then one non-DC. And in part 2 of this week's reviews will be Marvel and then one not Marvel or DC book. But this video, we are starting off with The Spirit, issue 6, I believe? Yeah, Spirit issue number 6. And even though the covers of these books usually have the wrong sort of mood that the interiors do, this does convey the overall plot of this issue, which is we find out kind of where the Spirit was this entire time, and mainly that he has been imprisoned. So this issue covers kind of his captivity. We begin with the POV of his jailer, his main jailer, who is a expatriate from America, the only person on this entire island that the Spirit is on that speaks English. So he quickly becomes kind of the Spirit's friend and kind of the only person that either of them can really talk to, because they're the only ones who speak English on the entire island. And then after learning about, the Spirit's captivity, mainly that every so often he was visited by this mysterious woman in white who would watch him, putz around his prison, we find out, now that the Spirit is back in town, we find out his version of events, mainly how he got captured. And it's as the Spirit has been, a pretty rollicking story of pulp and daring do and all that. It begins with the Spirit investigating a smuggling operation, someone trying to sneak poison gas out of the country. The Spirit goes to the docks and tries to stop it, which involves climbing onto a plane as it's taking off. Very Mission Impossible thing to do. Very cool little sequence there. And that leads into, of course, him eventually getting kidnapped. Don't want to spoil exactly how, because, pick up the book for yourself. It's really good and you should read it. Other than that main plot, we also have all the characters reacting to the Spirit being back in town, mainly that Commissioner Dolan is no longer retiring. He hears that the Spirit is back, it's all in the papers. His replacement tries to come in and be like, well, what do you know about this, because you're his best friend or whatever. And Dolan's like, no, I'm not, but I'm also not retiring because fuck you, you're a dick. And so we have Commissioner Dolan back on the scene. We have the Spirit, of course, back on the scene. And we're still finding out exactly how he got captured. And the big question this book poses is, who kidnapped the Spirit? Not even he's sure of who it was. It wasn't the octopus, it wasn't any of his other villains. It is some new person, presumably the woman in white. Doesn't know who she is or why she wanted him in jail so bad. But this is, overall, pretty Rick-rollicking, again, just double-fisted, pulpy, feel-good book. It's cartoony, the writing's great, and you could, all the words are written with an accent, like an old-timey New York, you're never gonna catch me, this dame, blah, 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 sort of accent that, really leaps off the page and gives it an original voice and tone. And I'm just really liking how kind of, again, classic comic book pulp it is. How it just completely leans into that whole, version of comic book storytelling. And, it's something that you don't really see today in comic books. Now that we're kind of in the modern age, we don't really have this kind of golden age stuff anymore. So it's great to see at least one book sticking to those guns and really bringing it, really delivering that entire experience and a really good version of that experience. Again, with great, colorful, pulpy, poppy art, big sound effects and all that. Just really great book overall. Really super enjoying it. So that is The Spirit number 6. Moving on to DC with Robin War Part 5, Son of Batman issue number 7. And what really stood out like immediately stood out to this book for me was the coloring. The actual like penciling and line work, and not so much, kind of scratchy and messy. But the colors just immediately pop off the page. It's clearly like a twilight, nighttime, but there's still tons of light out. I like how the reds contrast with the blues, like just in this first page, and then going on. So the first big splash page, the title page here. I just love how everything contrasts. You have the bright blues, the bright reds, then like just the dark grays of the Court of Owl, of the Talons, and everything just looks super nice and colorful, which I like. And as you can tell, the big thrust of this book is Robins versus Talons. We have the recently escaped, the actual Robins, Damien, Tim, and Jason, as well as the We Are Robins, the unofficial Robins, all escaping from the prison, from the cage, and having to deal with some newly hatched Talons from the Court of Owls. While this fight is going on, and it's a pretty standard fight, I guess, for big groups. Again, like we're focusing on one or two main characters. Damien, of course, because it's still his book, gets the big coup de grace on the Talons. His plan is the one that eventually kind of puts him out of commission enough for the rest of the Robins to escape. And while this big fight is going on, we also have Dick Grayson, who is broken into the let me get to a non-spoilery page. To Dick Grayson, who is broken into the Court of Owls' like headquarters, the labyrinth that Batman was in like issue 5 of the Batman run. So Dick's breaking into the Court of Owls, going straight to the center to figure out what their plan is, just trying to, take the direct path to solving this mystery. At the end of the book, there are a couple twists, the story going in directions that you might not expect from the previous 4 issues. We find out who the current head of the Court of Owls is, a little bit more about their plan, what this whole gray sun thing is about, whether it refers to Dick Grayson or to someone else completely. So there's still... it's an entertaining issue on its own right. Again, mainly a big action scene, ends with explosions. We also have Dick Grayson fighting people. But there's enough plot stuff going on by the end to keep you interested in the actual narrative, and some twists that definitely set up the next few issues of this story, drawing, eventually. I think we're 2 issues out of the conclusion, so we'll be getting that soon. And only 2 issues. They throw a pretty big twist in here. So can't wait to see how that goes. Overall, pretty good crossover event so far. Not hating it. Moving on to Batman and Robin Eternal number 12. Yeah, 12. I can read that backwards. Continuing basically the straight plot, continuing right where we left off last issue with Dick Grayson this time going into the mind melding with the sculptor and having his own adventure into his own head, or into the sculptor's head rather, as Dick Grayson learns first the origin of the sculptor, how she had come to work for Mother and with David Kane. And there's some really great panel layouts, and again, just I like the bright reds. Colors are really working for me here, but also the panel layouts I think are just really, really amazing. So on this page in particular, we have like the nice yellows, and then the panels form the wine glasses that eventually have a toast and then break together. Then on the next page we have more backstory on David Kane, on Orphan, who is just slaughtering people for Mother, and we have this kind of gravestone type panel layout over here that really gives the page and the scene a lot more character than you would have had otherwise. And what else? Here's another pretty good page. Just kind of Sandman-y, kind of Martian Manhunter-y, it's just sort of dreamscape things. So, that's my one reference pool for comic books that take place in the dreamscape, is Sandman. But yeah, really enjoying the art and the panel layout of this one. But the main narrative, the main kind of plot stuff going on here is that Dick Grayson's learning more about Mother's operations, how she works, and then at the very end, we finally learn what Mother's dealings with Batman were. And I'm hopefully holding this far enough and just, making the words blurry enough to not spoil anything too bad. But Dick Grayson finally learns what Batman's dealings with Mother were, and depending on how you read the previous issues of Batman and Robin Eternal, it may or may not be a big twist that kind of makes you reevaluate the story so far. Still pretty much liking Batman and Robin Eternal. These weeklies, again, are kind of hard to judge. This one easier than most, I feel, because it continues directly from the last issue. Like, it could have just been kind of one super long issue, while the others are kind of, couple steps removed from one another. These two issues I really liked. The first part felt a little like, do we really need all of this information about the sculptor? I don't know yet if she'll be more important later on. If so, great, we had that information. If not, it feels like it, was kind of circling around the edge of the story before diving right in, and even Dick Grayson is a little annoyed by that, so maybe that will all be important later on. But otherwise, really enjoyed the art in this book, bringing the plot forward, only following like one major story, and there's another twist at the end that, again, might make you reevaluate some characters and their actions and Mother and how much control she really has. We also do get a bit more characterization about Mother, and by characterization, I mean we learn, like, it's reinforced how much of a monster she is, how she uses, like, she doesn't care for the children at all. There's no motherly love or attachment there. They literally are just weapons, and she can choose to discard and replace, and they're disposable to her, and that really, this book kind of hammers that notion home too. Again, making us hate her more, which for a villain is effective. Other than that, yeah, not much else to say. Batman and Robin Eternal, continuing the story, which I'm liking enough to keep on picking it up so far. And the final book of this part of this week's reviews, one more Batman book, because apparently we just can't get enough of The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight 3, The Master Race, issue number 2. Again, I am liking this story a lot more than I thought I would originally, and I think a lot of that still has to do with this being mainly Azzarello's work than Miller's. So, spoilers if you hadn't picked up issue 1 yet. This issue follows Carrie Kelly as she is arrested for beating up cops and generally doing some other kind of vigilante stuff. In the last issue, she was arrested by Commissioner Jensen. In this issue, we find her being interrogated. She has not spoken for 27 days until, in this book, of course, she finally speaks to the Commissioner and tells them the story of, again, spoiler alert, how Bruce Wayne died. And so we see this whole story of Batman's last fight with this big guy who, it's actually more cartoonish than you'd expect from The Dark Knight, probably. Like, this is some Batman Odyssey type facial drawing right here, which is kind of not what I expected. But as Batman is slowly dying, he's telling all of these stories of his Batmaning to Carrie Kelly, who then promises to keep his legacy going on and going strong. And while all of that happens, we also continue where the mini story, I guess, of The Dark Knight issue 1 left off, which is that Ray Palmer has been contacted by Superman and Wonder Woman's daughter Lara to unshrink the bottle city of Kandor. And so we find out whether or not Ray succeeds and whether or not doing this in the first place was the best idea. And is there anything else, like, potentially spoilery? I don't know if it's a spoiler, but I'll just show it because it's pretty cool. It's a good throwback to the original, to like the Dark Knight Legacy. Eventually, this big guy makes an appearance again, and I'm not going to spoil exactly how this guy plays into the story, but it's here, and it has a pretty cool action sequence that reintroduces it to the plot. The little tie-in book this week is Dark Knight Presents Wonder Woman, issue number 1. And this part is written by Miller, it seems, and it follows Wonder Woman as she raises Lara. So the two spar for a bit, and you get both of their point of views. So both characters swap narration duties over the course of this mini story, and we see what Lara thinks of being raised on Themyscira, kind of shielded from the rest of society, forced to kind of just be on this island alone with her mother. And of course, her being a teenager, kind of wanting to rebel and wanting more freedom. And we also see Wonder Woman's point of view as Wonder Woman tries to, keep her daughter safe and keep her daughter on the right path and just raise her how she expects, the best way to raise a daughter. And that story is probably the best written female work that Frank Miller has done ever, in that the characters don't appear like overly emotional or like, they're not immediately prostitutes or femme fatales, or like they're actually seemingly fleshed out female characters, which is pretty good considering Frank Miller. So hopefully that continues. Hopefully he's mellowed out in his old age or whatever. But yeah, as I said in the beginning, been liking this a lot more than I first expected I would, and I really do hope that it keeps on going strong. I want to like this book, so so far so good. And that is it for this part of this week's comic book reviews. As I said before, in the next part we will be discussing some Marvel books and then one more indie. So if you want to watch that, please do. If you liked this video, though, rate it, subscribe. If you want more of these, any comments, questions, book recommendations, anything whatsoever, please leave a comment and I will try and get to it. And yeah, that is it for this part. Again, Marvel stuff next video. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you join me for some more comic book reviews.